Thank you. So this is the agenda. So it will be, we will be talking shortly about the horizontal regulation ESPR, which is not only for construction, but also focus on construction. That's a new regulation implementing digital product passports. Then we will have a status update of the standardization activities. I think it's important for buildingSMART to understand and to join that work. And then BIM standards under CENTAF 442, the connection to the work which is now being implemented as a part of the regulation, and then development of the European data dictionary, European DPP system. So Kobler, we are leading work. We are consulting the Commission on how to implement a system, database system for construction products in Europe, so that manufacturers will register product information, data on their products, the digital product passport, connected to a data carrier. So you have a relation between the manufacturer's data and a data carrier. We'll explain a little bit on that, on the work that we're doing. Then it's practical use case. So it's a EU-funded project. So the Commission has paid money to the industry for textiles, blah, 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 and construction to demonstrate how this can be built. And also all the obstacles for manufacturers actually to provide the necessary data, where the focus on EPD data is very important. And then we have a demonstration. This is GS1. GS1 is a partner with buildingSMART. I am attending in 14 days, similar summit, but for GS1. Those two worlds are connected. GS1 will present their technology. I think it's very important for buildingSMART to understand, listen, and open kind of the awareness of GS1 standards. So that's it. Then we go to the first one. So next one. So here you can see all the work being done in the Commission on digital product passport. So it's not one thing, it is horizontal. So if we just ask ourselves, what will this affect? What will happen? So it will mean that we want to, and I think we could go to the next one. Next one. It will affect a lot of different regulations. So this is just some example, and I pinpointed here what's relevant for construction, okay? There are many other regulations, but I pinpoint some of the ones which is important for construction. So you have the European Green Deal. This is the driver. Actually, this is the driver for digitalization for the Commission. So we want to reduce the carbon footprint in real life. Construction industry is heavy. So we have to reduce the carbon footprint by 55% within 2030. That is the timeline, guys. 2030, reduce carbon footprint. Then how actually to measure a footprint for the construction industry? How are we going to do that? How are we going to say this is the footprint of a building? Then we have to summarize insulation, steel, concrete, plasterboards. We have to make a budget, and we have to deliver the actual footprint. And all that information has to be exchanged from manufacturing companies to the actors. So this EU Green Deal is the driver. The practical side, so how can we make this happen? Okay, we have to change some laws. So that's why they changed some laws. So that's the Eco Design Directive going horizontal. So it applies this to textiles, car batteries, electronics, and construction. But construction has its own regulation, because all products used in construction is very vital for fire, sound, I mean, stability, all these things. So there's a it's a much stronger regulation for construction products than there is for textiles. And there is something called notified bodies. We're testing that products meets. We have we have a system of ensuring that manufacturers actually bring products to market under a CE mark, so it can be used. So, but where is buildingSMART in all of this? We'll come back to that, but I think it's important that maybe we don't sit on all the answers. So that's why Øyvind will talk a little bit later, Øyvind Roth, which is leading CEN 442, on their role in this, because that's important. We need standards to support it. And this is where the Commission is trying to bridge the standards and actually how to implement it. The last line here is called Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive. This is a financial users of the product. So here you go with the users of the product. They can get that information and report how many cubic meters of ready-mixed concrete I just bought. I'll get it via the DPP, so I can report. But that's not connected in any way to the BIM model. It is not. But when we talk about the window, very often what we see is that that is connected. But so the connection here is very important, but the digital product passport can connect to a lot of different things, and it can do so because it's connected to something called a data dictionary. And to understand that, that's where I very often say you have to take the red pill. So that's matrix. You have to go down there and understand, which is sometimes difficult. Next one. Next slide. I think they're working. Okay, thank you. Next one. So I'm using some of the slides from the Commission now. So these are not my slides, okay? So these are Commission slides, just to provide some kind of high-level information. So, so this is an explanation of why it's needed. In general, I would say what's important to understand that there's a need for a change. So then there is an update, there's a revision, and it goes in many dimensions. I'll give you an example of improved competitiveness of the sector, digital transformation of the ecosystem. So green transition of the manufacturing process, overall sustainability, built environment, efficient of natural resources. So this is energy, water, all of these things. We have to reduce, we have to know what this is, and then we have to structure that in a way, in a digital way, so that we can actually implement something which is useful, not only for the one which is putting the product on the market, but actually also the users of it. And we, via the new CPR, there are some elements which is important: digital and green. Green is environmental product data. So go to next slide. I'll come back to the change there, but on this thing, the carbon footprint thing, people talk about carbon footprint. I can guarantee you guys that in Europe, the carbon footprint will be delivered by manufacturers via a digital product passport. And then we can talk about what other stuff can we do. We can do a lot of other things, like if we want to reuse the product, we can use a digital product passport for that, to reuse the product, to make a kind of a library, in a asset library, which is really where you can look at the data and really, what is it? Because we lost all this information today. So the DPP will ensure that there is one unique connector between the product and the data for all of Europe. One place, because it's mandatory. You have to do it. Next one. Okay, go back one. So what's important to say, this is not only for construction, it's also for infrastructure. So it's no different. So very often we talk about this as different things, but a pipe is a pipe, a pump is a pump, no matter where it's used, okay? So construction product is a construction product. Next one. There's a lot of different data platforms in Europe, but what I would like to emphasize is that I think that the DPP, that transition now, is going to drive a lot of policy because it's practical and it can be used. So I see we've been looking at a lot of the other databases that has been developed, and what we see is that the DPP is quite strong. So next one. And here comes with an important part. What about the characteristics of products? So this is already there. It's called essential characteristics. So on a product, we have something called essential characteristics. It's defined in the regulation. And this is where we have technical committees in Europe. I even will explain a little bit more about SEN. But we have technical committees that is actually looking at what is essential characteristics for a product linked to the building envelope. So if it's fire, if you have a characteristic of fire or thermal properties, it's linked to building codes, then of course it is essential and you have to deliver information on that according to CPR in something called a digital product post, in a DOP, Declaration of Performance. Next one. This is new. That's the most difficult data to get as a user. It's the most difficult data to deliver as a manufacturer, by far. This is new, okay? So it's actually a data set of the LCA in an EPD, digitally following a standard called ISO 22057. That is most probably what's going to be announced by the Commission, that they will use that standard. Next one. So I'll talk about this system in a separate, when I get there. This is a system established for digital product passport for construction. This is where I think buildingSMART should engage in the work so that they actually understand and can use this as an industry. And I think that the Brussels effect means that other regions around the world can implement their dictionaries, so the Australian data dictionary or the US data dictionary, and from that, Brazilian data dictionary, boom. From that, develop the schema. So the thing you have to do, develop a dictionary, then you create the templates, and then you go. Next one. What is a product? Product type. This is technical for buildingSMART. So what is an object? So in the dictionary, you need to define an object. What is an object and what is the characteristics of an object? And I can guarantee you that it's not an IFC object. It will be an object according to a harmonized European standard. Next one. The prioritization, what comes first? So the regulation implements not like from day one to day two, but it's implementing on product categories. So one will come first, and then the second will come, and then the third will come, and here we go. So you have a transition from going from 0 to all the standards, and this is done under a request by the European Commission. Next one. Then it is my pleasure to introduce Martin. Martin Schreck, he's leading work in the DPP standardization work, which I think is very important for everyone in the room here. So the important part would be to engage. So Martin, here you go.
Thank you, Lars. Get my slides here. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Lars. Thank you for making it possible to present today. Yeah, I'm working for the Norwegian Building Authority. My 100% job is to represent, coordinate the Norwegian contribution to the revision of the construction product regulation and all underlying standards. And my new other 120% job is I'm the convener of strategy advisory group of JTC 24. which is developing the standards for an operating system of the digital product passport in the European community. Next slide. Thank you. I will talk a bit about the content of the standardization we work. I will introduce you some important requirements and some architectural things, and then we need to talk about semantics, where I think buildingSMART should play a role. What you see here is the eco-design regulation that Lars has just presented. There has been a standard. This regulation has passed the European Parliament and the Council and will enter into force sometime in June next year. This has generated a standardization request to Sensenelec, which will develop the standards that are necessary in order to enforce the law. The standardization request basically requests what is written here to the right. There are 8 modules on unique identifiers, data carriers, management of access rights, information system security and business confidentiality, data authentication, reliability, integrity, interoperability, data processing, data storage, and DPP lifecycle assessment. These 8 modules are 8 standards, or perhaps more, we don't know yet. And they are then actually distributed between 3 working groups. Working Group 2 works on unique identifiers and data carriers. It is the convener is my Swedish colleague Jon Dahlgren from Standards Sweden. JTC 24 Working Group 3 is on security. The convener here is Torgeir Waterhouse from Norway. And the JTC 24 Working Group 4 that works on interoperability. This is Otto Handler from Standards Austria. The secretary of this standardization is Dean, with the chair Thomas Knote from Fraunhofer. So we are developing these standards, and now you see here on top comes then and this is sort of the lower part here, the lower half is the operating system, which I would call. And the upper part then is the digital product passport for construction that has to use this operating system. And this will be handled in TC 442, where my colleague Eugen Ruth is the chair, and the convener in Working Group 12 will be Espen Schulze from CoBuilder. So how we fill this top part, we don't know yet, or of course some people here are lost and so have an idea, but the work will start in about a month's time when we have the kickoff meeting in Brussels. So this is sort of the system, and the top part here is one delegated act, I would call it. There is another delegated act or another law enforced, that is the battery regulation that also says that there shall be a digital product passport. But the top part could also be textiles, toys, furniture, whatever. So there will be, we don't know how many delegated acts will actually be issued by the European Commission in order to develop a digital product passport. But what is sure, the data, and now hold fast, sits tight, the data shall have a free flow across the industry, across the different semantic worlds. So in theory, a blue jeans developed and produced in the United States can end up as a thermal insulation product cycled in a product in Poland or in Belgium. And that means that the content, the information about these blue jeans developed in the United States has to be transferred into a product passport for a thermal insulation product at some point in the future, or could be, if this is the case. So that is quite a challenge what we are first facing here. We have to develop systems that are system neutral and agnostic. We cannot allow buildingSMART data dictionary to solve it, although I'm very sure you could solve the construction product industry, but nobody would let you. You would have a lot of enemies in the world because you need to share. It has to be adaptable and extendable to the new delegated acts. By today, we don't know if it's 5 or 500 delegated acts that are coming. It is also by law required that the data ownership remains with the operator. That means the manufacturer has to own his data, has to control his data. The data has to be searchable, comparable, and the data exchange across industry sectors. So what we do in JTC 24 is our deliverable focuses solely on the functionality, not data. We are making an operating system. Look at it as Windows or iOS X. We have operating system. This is what JTC24 does. And then you have CorelDRAW, AutoCAD, ArchiCAD, or whatever, Word, Excel. And these are individual products that are operating under this specific operating system, and they have to be compatible. And that would be the digital product passports. And then another thing is, if companies tend to go bankrupt, but the data has to remain. That is also, we have to have a backup system. So if you buy a product today and in 5 years the manufacturer is bankrupt, the recycler or the repair shop must be able to still access the information. And that's why there will be a backup system. Here I have shown you a little bit of a more abstract. You have on top the sectors. With sectors, I mean the different industrial sectors. And they also have to, they all have to produce digital product passports here on the DPPA and DPPB. And in the middle there are semantic frameworks. And these semantic frameworks, some frameworks are used across industries, some are only used for a single industry. They are handling the data. JTC down there is a functionality that is the operating system, and there will be a gateway. Just to give you an idea, this red could be BSDD, it could be CoBuilder, it could be PDT Norway, wherever, and they have to serve the digital function in requirement to the digital product passport. And I know that buildingSMART has approached the Commission and like others and said we can do this, and there is no doubt that you can do it, but we cannot give the right, the privilege to only one company. So we have to cooperate. But buildingSMART is not in this JTC24 represented. But I think it's very important that you are, because it could be also new business opportunities for you in the future. Because you could actually, your knowledge, make available for other industries. Things are used to be, you can recycle your knowledge, sort of. So we are making a DPP system and a framework that is an operating system, and we are providing an overarching functionality across the sectors in JTC24. We have in the months of August and September had an extensive series of workshops where we looked at the, we invited semantic framework owners to present. The ones that are in bold here, they have followed our invitation, and they represented their technology and their ideas. And we have, in this way, we were able to map, and you probably know all this. By the way, I'm using here the slides of Otto Handler, the convener of Working Group 4, which he used in the last public session. So this is my colleague's slide, not my slide. It's also stated on the lower left side. There are many, they are big, they are incompatible in meaning. They have often a compatible metastructure, and they're always connected to product data. And they all want to remain. They all want to participate. So how do we do this? Some of you might know this. You can map these individual frameworks next to each other. If you have 2 or 3, it's probably a dual job, but if you have 10 or 15 and they all have to be interacting with each other, you get something like in the picture to the right. You can't manage that anymore, and you can't manage that over time. You can't update it, you can't control, you don't know what's going to happen. We have difficulties in the upstream. So let's say you have a product that is going into another product, is going into another product. If they use different semantic words and one changes the screw, suddenly it doesn't work downstairs. How do we do this? How do we still exchange the information? Well, then there is the lower right person that we sort of have a neutral point that everybody refers to. This is the idea. We have a lot of interest. We have asset administration shell from Germany, DPP 4.0. We have GS1. Everybody wants to be part of the party. And I deliberately say party here because this is a party. There's going to be a party. But in a party or in a competitive game, an equilibrium is reached when each player chooses their best strategy based on the strategy of others, and no player can gain by changing their strategy unilaterally. This means the idea is that non-individual player benefits from changing their strategy without the others doing so. It's a fantastic sentence from German Forbes Nash. It earned him the Nobel Prize in Economy in 1994 and a Hollywood movie. And it's actually the basics of game theory. It's also the foundation of the nuclear armament we had in the 70s or 80s to keep peace. So this has worked. The thing is, and that's why I'm saying BSDD or GS1 or so, not alone can do this. You have to cooperate. And the more you invite to the party, the more stable the system gets. If you make a party at home, a smart idea is to invite the neighbors. They don't complain about the noise then, right? But you also invite more and more. And then you actually have a nice fest party. And you are remembered. The only thing is, those who are not contributing in the preparation of the party, when you have a nut or a strawberry allergy, they must not complain if they are served nuts or strawberries. So those who are not participating in JTC24 and the operating system, they can be lucky. They are still allowed to the game, but then they play the game of others. That is the fact. And that's why I say this. We are trying to get everybody into the game. We are trying to let everybody talk. We want to have a transparent system, just like in the philosophy of building smart. But you need to play the game. So our solution is that the regulator, read European Commission, defines the how, the rules governing a repository, digital service providers, that would be building smart or co-builder or whatever, GS1, with a commercial interest in operating a repository may do so as long as they adhere to the rules, ensuring the market remains competitive. So this is the game. And what are we doing? Therefore, Select JTC24 is developing standards in line with the new SPR law. Its responsibility is to define how semantic frameworks interact with the DPP system, while it's up to the frameworks to adapt to in order to stay relevant. So we are standardizing with the law in our hand. We are giving you the rules, how to communicate. We are giving you a protocol or interface that everybody has to use when sending and receiving data. And thus, all the different semantic worlds can stay in touch with the DPP system. So the conversion of a parameter is not done in the DPP system. They will go to the repository. So it's done by this standard. This is the unit. This is the value. And then it sends data to the other semantic world. Then they need to convert this if they need to convert it. But the information flow we control, the how, and the functionality then is to be provided by the semantic worlds. So a semantic gateway that we are doing here is a function or a protocol to be used when exchanging data with other semantic frameworks. This is the aim we're trying to achieve. We are in the process. We hope we get this through. And I can just say again, if BSDD isn't there, you're invited to the party, but then you have the party of others. Thank you very much. That was my talk.
So then I'd like to welcome Øyvind Roth. He is, so back in the days when BIM standardization was to be established, there was a meeting in Oslo where Norway, because of our position, I guess, were elected to lead this work. And the guy leading this work for all these years is Øyvind Roth, and he's coming here. Øyvind.
Thank you. So, Lars, these things is working? Okay. Okay. Yes, short presentation. Now I also will repeat a little bit what I said about in Valencia, actually, on presenting the standardization work. And I will go through the system for standardization, how we work, and then how we can support the work Martin just presented, and then how buildingSMART can connect into this. First, a little bit about myself. I have been around for 21 years now with the BIM community. I also was the chairman or the vice chair together with Rasso for the buildingSMART XCOM for some years, 4 years, some years ago. So, yeah. First of all, BIM standardization in CEN and ISO. First of all, the standardization system. We have ISO CEN. ISO is the international standardization body you all know. CEN is the European. On the electrical technical side, you have IEC on international, and CENELEC, the CENELEC on Europeans. This joint group, Martin, was a joint group between CEN, CENELEC. That's the reason why the CEN, CENELEC joint group. And on telecommunication, you have ITU on international and ETSI on European level. And there is, down here, it's 34 national standardization bodies in Europe that all are member of CEN. And the special thing in CEN is that, or in Europe, is that the European Commission use CEN as a tool to align the market. We need to have the same standards all over the European market. And to do so, if there is existing CEN standard, every member state has to withdraw the national standard. It should be only one standard in the European market. And this CEN is more than EU. Norway is not a part of EU, but we are members, and even UK is member of CEN and is obligated to follow this. Yeah, I just jump 2 quick slides just to tell you that there is quite both CEN and ISO is quite large organization. You have standards, ISO standards and CEN standards in Europe, ISO standards worldwide and CEN standards in Europe, everywhere. The way we work, we work by consensus, same as buildingSMART, try to agree and to manage to do this with all these different people, organization, and all these different interests. We have strong regulation how we should work to ensure transparency, that everyone can have a word to say, and so on. And there is also this voting system that one nation, one vote. It's not that true in Europe because they have some kind, they call the weighted votes. If there is conflicts, that means that the larger countries have a little bit more weight than the smaller countries, but that is not much. On ISO level, Norway and China, one vote each. And there is an agreement, of course, because there is one regulation in ISO and one regulation in CEN, but they have made a very detailed agreement how we collaborate. And I can tell you, I am the secretary of this 442 and AC13 as well, Lisbeth Landfram from Standards Norway. We have struggled a lot with this, but we need to follow the rules. And that is not an easy task. CEN TC 442 was established in 2015 because we wanted to implement the BIM, IFC. It started with IFC in Europe. The name is Building Information Modeling, short term BIM. But what is BIM? That is a huge discussion out there. So when you're going selling open BIM, I can tell you there will lot of people different. What is this open BIM about? Is it a model? Is it management? Is it the process? What is it? So we normally describe it with the scope of the 442 that was negotiated in 2014, that we work with standardization in the field of structural semantic life cycle information for the built environment. And the word construction, you know, if you go to the native English-speaking people, that is just on the site. Maybe it's design, but definitely not facility management. But we say this is for the built environment in the whole life cycle. And we also say that we develop structured set of standards, specifications, and reports with specified methodologies. So you can also say that BIM is a methodology to digitalize the built environment sector. It's more than IFC, much more. So this group has grown quite large over the years. We started with 3 working groups, but now we have 12. The last one I will come back to here. I think what's important for buildingSMART here is that we have a horizontal group. This horizontal group at the moment have a project describing a recipe for all the product TCs in Europe, how they in the future shall write the standards so it easily can take the properties that is defined in the standards, all the properties defined in the standards, and take it out and move into a dictionary based on standards that is developed in working group 4 in 442 here. And the newest group here, the working group 12, will have a startup meeting in Brussels in end of October. We start to be the place that we connect the ecosystem from 442 into the DPP system. So that is the group that will focus on how this can be done. We have also ISO part of this, ISO TC 59, AC 13. I'm also sharing at the moment this group. That you see most of the, quite many members are member of this BIM committee in ISO. Maybe the most important group so far you have been working here is this joint working group 12. That is this group that have collaborated with buildingSMART to have the IFC into the ISO as an ISO approved as an ISO standard. But there is also other that we have the classification in working group 2. We have 19650 in working group 13, and there is also a lot of work ongoing now to synchronize between the GIS and BIM standards. As I told you about the Vienna Agreement, how we collaborate. So in all of this, we have this group of standards today. I did count them just before here. We have now 40 standards, technical specification or technical reports as guidelines and so on, published or under development today. Most of them, I will say about 30 is EN ISO standards. So even many of you here is not member of CEN. You can go into this work through the ISO committee, through SC13, and then you can collaborate through the Vienna Agreement and be a part of the work. So short on the EU policy here. You learn about these acronyms here, but I was just say the term the construction ecosystem. It's because what I told you, the term construction in legislation in Europe, it's used wider than the English definition. So that's the reason why they now try to use the term construction ecosystem. We have used the built environment, and it covers the whole life cycle for everything that is man-made. And the DOPC is that the declaration of performance and conformity. The conformity is new with the new CPR. This has been mentioned. The interesting thing here, this is a strategy document from the Commission that mentioned especially that in this legislation, standards for CEN TC 442 shall be used. So it shall be support the BIM standards developed by 442. And it's even mentioned directly in the new CPR, the new regulation, that this should be. That BIM standards should be followed, and then we need to be clear on what is actually meant by the BIM standards. Yeah, the renovation with, again, building information modeling is an important part of this. Just to maybe wrap up a little bit, As Martin mentioned, we have this ESBR, as the Eco-Design Directive, that is for every product put on the European market. There has been a standardization request, and the standardization request is that is a mandate from the Commission to send Senelec system to develop standard supporting the legislation. So that is JTC 24. We have now established the working group 12 in 442. We guess it, yeah, I'm sure. We guess it will be a mandate soon, or standardization request, and we invite you in here. Yeah, I skipped this one. Just to take the short here. We have this today, that buildingSMART is connected well into both ISO and SEN, but you should discuss maybe that you can connect into this as well. Then you will also be a part of the whole JTC 20, this party Martin was mentioned. So yeah, here is a lot of, so I think that's all. Boss, was it okay?
Thank you, Øyvind. So, as we heard now, there has been a lot of standardization activities. I think the connection between Europe and ISO, so SEN and ISO, is important. So it's global standards, can be used worldwide. So then I will be talking on my next topic. I'll talk a little bit now, if I can get the slides. I think we need to go next. Sorry, I have now maybe the power. Yeah, I'll talk about a study that we're doing for the Commission, European Commission. So the Parliament has voted on the regulation CPR, but under something called delegated acts, the Commission is empowered to implement the DPP system. So they went out to find consulting. So Cobbler, we are working with the two other partners, UNE, which is a Spanish standardization organization, and Technalia. So we are sitting in bi-weekly meetings with the Commission on our work on how to develop this DPP system. So what is the technical framework and how much money will it cost? What about security, all these things. So we're kind of looking at pro and cons for 3 different options of setting up something called a DPP system for construction products. And this is very important because it's specific for construction. And as Martin told you, other domains might have other, let's say, ontologies. But construction have its own. We have our legal framework, which we will follow and have to follow. I'll just start off again with this slide. This is the new thing. This is, on the data side, this is heavily impacting the work that we're doing. And this has to be digital. There's so many data points that in real life, EPDs today is delivered in PDF, very often on a high level. And to get this into the product level is vital. So that's why we have to digitize. We cannot sit and deliver PDF files anymore, okay? So the study is to look at these different options. So on the development, what is new is, of course, digital product passport is new. Inside the DPP, we have environmental impact for construction in general, so that includes infra. The database or system which is established is going to make it much easier to get information from manufacturers in Europe. So there are some manufacturers in the room today, but not many. But they are the ones which is responsible of the data. They will be the only one that can deliver data. And then you have users and market surveillance, of course, of more of the DPP. The new thing, and this is where I'm kind of proud because I've been working on this topic of dictionaries for many years, and suddenly, wow, it's in regulation. That's cred, guys. And that's really, I think it's very important that we understand that we need a common language in the industry. And this is implemented by the government, by the European Commission. It is part of the law. So this in delegated acts, in real life, it has to be transferred and connected to what was just previously presented. So here we go with what standards we have been looking at. So Kobler, we are consulting, and we're looking at, what standards should be used to develop this system? So, and what framework, I would say. So what you will see is that there is one here, which is familiar, I guess. It's the one which is a basement. So what is important to understand, this is EN ISO 1206/3, data dictionaries. And that's with an S. So that means that dictionaries will talk to each other. The first one is governance. It's France. Discussing what this is not a property. We don't agree. So they had like 10 years of defining this process standard. So in an organization, we want to define width, length, height, pressure, whatever, how we measure it. That's a governance process, so that when you enter something in a dictionary, it's well described who made it and things like that. I have a slide on that to explain. Data templates, that's Kobler. We started this work. The inventors of data templates, Kobler, worked with FIEC many years ago, saw that we need structured templates for objects coming from dictionaries. Okay, coming from dictionaries, that connection. Objects and templates and properties. Properties can be used with one or many templates. Test methods in the regulation. Level of information need, this is the connection to governmental strategies. So this is milestones, actors, objects, and use cases or purposes. Okay, I want to do energy calculation for my building. So you model that as a large stakeholder or a government. The higher you get, the more money you will save. EN ISO 2257 mentioned it. Smart C marking, that's how to exchange data between A and B. XML. And all of this is connected and part of the study. So I just wanted to take up this slide here. So where's the connection, guys? It's here. Okay, that's the connection. And that means that we can actually drive the industry, but we have to understand the importance of data and where should we focus on data. Is it in the different rooms here? Or is it working with dictionaries to agree on what is information? And what is the source of what we write into these things? And that's why all of these technical committees that has been working on product standards, when we have templates from them, which is kind of the technical language in Europe, we will be able, even in BSDD, to agree on one data set, not only for one project, but for all projects, all actors, and all countries in Europe. So that's a much stronger way of working than working the way that we do today. This standard that we looked at, this is the French standard. It defines on how we actually, at the end of the day, define a GUID. So that's the machine language. So the concept of a dictionary is to go from English or German or whatever language to machine. So machine language is the point. So if we have a structured data set which is machine readable, we will get much, much further than if we have it just for us. You see how much we struggle with how we name a property. It's just nonsense. Stop. Dictionaries. In this way, we can use this one property everywhere, in all databases, all exchange of data everywhere. Not a problem. And then I just I'm working with the oil industry now. Suddenly they're interested in BIM. So I just took with this one slide, people working with something called CFOS, which is big. I think it's as big as IFC, CFOS. But kind of how a data template generically can become into a template which is generic, which can again support values, which could be system, space, product, whatever. Okay, but it's just another way of thinking. So then going back to the framework and what we're trying to do. So the thing here is that we need some sort of data carrier. Which is not the DPP system for construction, it's a part of it, but the point is that you need some sort of a data carrier following the standardization work that Martin just talked about. But then you need information connected to that. So that's where the dictionary comes into play, the template comes into play, and the EPD dataset comes into play. Okay. And then, of course, from this you can translate because BCD and all dictionaries have a rule that you have to do everything in English, and then you translate. So that means that to avoid duplicates in dictionaries, you have to do it in English, and you have to follow, as I just showed, this thing. So this is where everyone fails, because you don't spend enough time to follow this standard. So then when you go down the road, you haven't documented in the dictionary, you haven't written all the metadata which is required. And also very often what I see is that people haven't read standards, existing standards for rail, existing standards. So sitting in spaces like talking to rail people or road people, gravel is gravel, pipes is pipes, it's developed under standards. So there's a template for all of that. But this is where people sit alone and try to develop something else, and DPP will change that. Whoa. Can you try to help me, guys, over there? Yeah, thank you. Now I got it. So this is option 1. So now I'm talking about what are the different options. So this is option 1. It's a centralized system managed by the Commission, where you go and register your DPP, your product data. There's a template, you fill in the values. Centralized system. 2, DPP service providers. So certified providers, you have, let's put the number, 5 to 10 different actors you go to, and you say, I'm a manufacturer. It's like EDR order files have the same concept. You just say, I want to send my order files via you. And then there is a network, and you don't have to think. They communicate. So you go to one of them, you register, and this is where it's going to be kind of, our work is to look at pro and cons on these options. What will it cost? For whom? What about security? What about this? What about that? And of course, all of these things takes a lot of time. So we have been working now for like 8-9 months, working hard with a lot of people, and it's a lot of work. So we are delivering our second report now this month, and the final report is in March-ish next year. The last version, the last alternative is that this stays with the manufacturing companies. But then we have to have, because what was mentioned by Martin, we have to have a backup. We need a backup of the data. Suddenly, if someone goes bankrupt, you need backup. So in the 2 first alternatives, there are backups, of course, but this one is really difficult, because how are we going to get this backup? So these are the alternatives. So that's kind of the study on the system. And it's coming, in different steps, as I mentioned. So then we are going to next one, which is another project. It is, so Cobbler, again, we were asked if we could lead CIRPAS 2 work on setting up a dictionary, providing a template, going into ArchiCAD, going into Revit, setting requirements, send that information to manufacturers that is actually managing, developing the product. We're working with Velux on this use case, Velux Windows, to then create a DPP and put it to the market. So actually implementing, we're working in real life, so we work here with Autodesk and we work with Archicad in this case. So then, and so I give the floor to you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
He's muted.
Okay, bear with us while we try and get Enzo's audio.
Okay.
Working. So the mic is not muted.
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, and just test your slides, Advance.
Super. Oh, am I? Oh, I'm showing my slides. Okay, I thought that Lars was going. Perfect. So, good morning, everyone. Quite a lot of standards you were hearing about, a lot of theory, but there's also something we're doing in practice, and that is the SERPAS-2 project. What is SERPAS-2? SERPAS-2, first of all, is a, so these are slides from the convener of this consortium, which is called a CEA. So it's the French Alternative Energies and Atomic Energy Commission, who's leading this. The vision of the SERPAS-2 is a DPP system, and we've been hearing that just before by Lars. Is a DPP system is an information system for the circular economy, which means that transitioning to this circular economy, which the ESPR is all about, will require quite some flexibility. Flexibility, yes, but not in the term of the technologies that we're using, that they want to use in this case. So we need to work mature state-of-the-art technologies and a lot of built-in interoperability. We've heard a few of the standards. We heard about GS1 standards. We heard about ISO standards. So this is basically the technology, but also the interoperability basics that we need. It needs to be deployed at low cost. Why? Because we need to get everybody on board, not only the larger companies, but also the smaller SMEs. It's a deployment project. Let's be completely sure. It's a deployment project which will cover 3 years of duration. It has started in May of this year. And the problem that we're trying to solve, again, is not a technology problem, but it's a data interoperability problem. Making sure that everybody's on the same page, everybody can relate to information that is shared and can act upon it in an efficient way without having any additional errors, without any additional delays, and of course, additional costs involved. The number of partners in this SERPAS-2 project are in total 49. What is the objectives, or what are the objectives of SERPAS-2? First of all, to test a DPP in a real-time setting, at scale, a real-time setting, and in at least 2 target value chains. And we'll get back to that, for which value chains we have selected for the construction pilot. Because this is not only about construction, it's about a lot of other sectors. What needs to be demonstrated is cross-pilot interoperability. So we are working specifically on construction, and you've seen with the added complexity that we're not only looking at ESPR, but we're also looking at the CPR, so the Construction Product Regulation. But ESPR covers a lot of other sectors. It has been mentioned before: apparel, footwear, consumer electronics, tires, etc. So we need to learn from each other. We need to learn from each other, because this needs to be one DPP for everyone that can cover everybody's needs and takes into account everybody's restrictions, limitations. As mentioned, it needs to be low cost, because we need to provide support to those SMEs, the smaller companies, who need to be able to adapt this new DPP in a fashionable and in an easy way. This is why we're talking also about the deployment of DPP as a service. The objective 4 is to support this deployment and adaptation of these DPPs by other sectors that are not yet in focus right now, that are not yet on the radar. So we're preparing for the next steps, the next sort of future, direct future. What problem is CRPAS2 trying to solve? First of all, the first one is how can all of these industries agree on a common DPP system compliant to the requirements of today's regulations, ESPR, CPR, CSRD, etc., but also future regulations. And how can all of these industries agree on an extensible and flexible DPP system? We're talking about mandatory. So if we talk about the requirements in ESPR, we're talking about mandatory data. But how can we use the same DPP to add some extra information, not mandatory, but will still have an effect and an efficiency, also to look at new business models? What is the primary focus? The primary focus of a CRPAS2 is anything from the moment the product is put on the market. It's not about upstream traceability. By the way, there is another EU project, which is called DigiPass, which is taking that into account. So we're talking about the digital product passport. The upstream traceability is more on the material passport. Timelines, very important. So you see a few timelines here. The entire DPP under ESPR request has started end of 2023. As you've heard, ESPR has been adopted in July. The CPR, revised CPR, has been adopted, approved, and came into force in May of this year. And you see a few mandatory DPP start dates. We see the one for batteries in beginning of 2027. For textiles is mid-2027. And look at the construction products. This is beginning of 2028. This may look far away. This is 3.5 years further down the road, but it's faster than we think. We are still waiting for some specifics from the Commission. So there is a framework, ESPR, CPR frameworks, but the specifics will be done, will be decided on delegated acts by the Commission. But as we discussed, the DPP system needs to be set into place first, then comes the DPP data. All of the interactors, all manufacturers, but all other stakeholders will need to prepare for this. Now, if you look at the CRPAS2 project, we have 3 years, and in those 3 years, we have separated different tasks that we will take into account. Because by April or May 2027, we need to have some recommendations. And it's not only at the end, but we will be interacting with the European Commission and with the other pilots within CRPAS2 along the way, and share our learnings. Those learnings will probably also have their effect on what the Commission will decide in terms of the delegated acts content. Now, just specifically on the Lighthouse pilot, so the CRPAS2 project has 13 Lighthouse pilots. One of them is construction. We were very happy, very lucky that we were able, as co-builder NGS1 France, to put this on the map, on the radar of the CRPAS2 leader, CEA leader. So we have submitted the proposal in September 2023. And we have had on May 15th a kickoff meeting in Paris with our partners. Again, mentioning this once more, in addition to this construction pilot, the CRPAS2 is also running 12 other Lighthouse pilots, 6 in apparel and footwear, 5 in consumer electronics, and 1 in the tire industry. And again, through those regular cross-sector meetings, we will learn from each other because we're looking at one specific DPP, not a DPP for each of those sectors separately. Very important. The title of this Lighthouse pilot construction is Improving Information Exchange, Collaboration for the Construction Product Lifecycle. So we're really looking at the lifecycle using the Digital Product Passport and other interoperable open standards, which is a multi-stakeholder approach. So we're not looking at one specific stakeholder within the whole product lifecycle. No, this is something that will be used by all, or will need to be used by all stakeholders in the whole construction, especially towards the end when an eco-organism, as they're called, will need to decide what will be done with the products reused, repurposed, remanufactured, etc. The focus is on the requirements in terms of digitalization and sustainability, Those are two things that go together, need to go together, if you want to take it, make it an efficient way. And on the other hand, it's the legislative requirements, CPR and ESPR together. Again, for the construction lighthouse pilot, those two regulations are crucial. Now, what do we see as the, and on the right-hand side, you will see all the partners that we have in this lighthouse pilot construction. What are the opportunities that we think will be provided by the DPP? Is first of all to facilitate product identification. We were talking about GS1 standards, the GS1 identifiers and data carriers. Enabling this enhanced communication between stakeholders and maximizing the value of those product data so that they are used, not only mentioned, but used. And of course, enabling more sustainable construction practices, enabling this full life cycle traceability, in leading to this end user trust and protection, of course. The pilot snapshot, we're looking at an alignment both with between this ESPR and the construction product creation, but also with ISO TC59 and the CEN TC442 network, which is basically called the BIM network. So we don't leave BIM outside of this equation. It will be completely, entirely integrated in this. And again, we're trying to aim for seamless digital continuity. Very, very, very important. So as I said before, the Surpass 2 is looking at two separate value chains, and the value chains that we have chosen for the lighthouse pilot in construction is the first use case off-the-shelf construction products, basically ready-made, and then you see the flow on top here. The flow is slightly different. The process flow is slightly different, because you're working with a data template. The manufacturer declares the values of each of the properties in this data template, making it a product data sheet. They will add a data carrier, so a QR code, and Dan O'Gorman, who will follow me, will show a real-time, a real-life example of this. And the contractor will add its requirements to its project, and then you will see, do these specific products comply with those requirements, yes or no? The DPPs will be verified, and then once we are at the end of life or second life, third life, we will look at reuse and recycle. So in this case, we're working on the off-the-shelf construction products. We're working with roofing systems of the company Soprema. For the second stream, we're talking about made-to-order construction products, and we're working with Velux, so the roof windows. So there, the process is slightly different, because we're talking about creating the template, and we're adding the requirements. So the specifier will add the requirements to the product. The manufacturer then will declare the values. He will say, these are indeed the values that you have required. So it's made to order. Add the data carrier will be added. Contractor will add its data, and we will continue the flow. Those are two separate flows, very important. But I think both of them will provide us with some learnings on what the best way is to move forward. Yeah. I'm at the end of my presentation, so thank you very much for your attendance. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there with you. I have to present about the same topics right now at a building construction fair here in Paris, 4-day fair, quite large. Enjoy your time in Marrakesh, and don't forget to try the very good Tangier Malakshia. Not good for vegetarians, but it's a delicacy of Marrakesh that stays in my mind. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the summit. And we'll,
Thank you very much, Enzo. Now, Dan, can we just check your audio if it's working?
Yes, good morning, everybody. This is Dan O'Gorman from a sunny Dublin for a change. It's not raining here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to present something very practical, and during this presentation, I'll be asking you to take out your phones and actually scan a QR code. And as Enzo just said there in Lars before, I want to show you how we can make this smart, because we've all talked about information, but we have to do it in a smart way, efficient way, and above all, a frictionless way. We have to repeat what everyone in the audience does every day when you walk into a supermarket, where you simply pick stuff off the shelf, present it at the EPOS, electronic point of sale, and the transaction goes through. We've got to replicate that in the industry. And the key joiner between what we do in retail, given that I'm from GS1, and logistics, is exactly that: the ability to be able to scan a QR code that actually feeds back into a single source of truth, which in this case is a DPP, a digital product passport, which is coming in 2018, as you heard earlier. So I'm just going to advance my slides. So basically, what you see on screen there is a lot of complexity. And on the right-hand side, you can see CSDD, EUDR, and you can see then on the bottom there, barcodes are going to come in 2027, where we'll be switching across in the retail space from 1D barcodes to 2D barcodes. This is a fundamental change, which will change not just the construction industry, but retail and everything else we do. And what's it about? It's about connecting the end customer back to the manufacturer of that product. This is critically important in the age of AI, where if we don't do this, you can get a very convincing answer from a large language model like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. But that answer may be totally based on rubbish. So it's rubbish in, rubbish out. It is absolutely critical for the sector as a whole, whether it's in FM, whether it's in engineering, construction, retail, whatever, that those manufacturers actually corral their end users to a single source of truth. The other thing that's changing is BREEAM and LEED version 5. So BREEAM, we're all familiar with BREEAM and gold standard and platinum standard, and this is an aspiration that everybody wants to do. Again, this has to be based on information, but it's also in the operational phase. It's not good enough anymore just to say that this building is green and then forget about it. We have to now introduce a system that actually measures the ongoing operational carbon, because at the end of the day, that is 29% of the 40% of greenhouse gas emissions coming from the built environment. And then on the bottom left, for anybody from the UK, the Building Safety Act has made it a criminal offence if you don't keep records, and 2 years in jail if you fail. So moving on to the next slide, is you can see all these actors, and in the app that we will be experimenting with in a few seconds, you have these 13 actors. Each one of these actors has to see something that benefits them, because if they don't see a benefit out of this end-to-end process, then over time, they will stop contributing towards its success. So it's a win-win, and it has to be a win-win for every player. And you can see, starts with the manufacturers, goes through the architect, to the LC engineer, and all the way around to the robot on the top of the screen. And this could be 20 to 60 years time, where that product has to be reused for repurposing purposes, because that is true ESG, as you can see in the middle of the screen. Moving on to the next slide. This is where it makes the difference. Traditionally, everyone in this audience thinks that buildings start with the designers, as you can see in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Then it flows through to manufacturing, through to construction, to hand over the information to the operational side. And then, as you can see here on the top left-hand side, it's about how can we repurpose these products? And this can only be achieved if we have a record. Practically everybody in this call, when you started off, probably bought a second-hand car from a private individual. The first thing you'll check if you're smart, and I emphasize if you're smart, is the service history log. What does that tell you? It tells you how that product was cared for during its initial couple of years of life by the primary or secondary user. We have to replicate this within the construction industry, because if we want true sustainability and true circularity, we have to be able to reuse product with confidence. And for those in the insurance companies, they want to have that level of confidence. They want to be able to refer back to where this information came from. And to do that, as Lars and Enzo and everybody else has said so far, we have to go and reinvent the whole process. And the reinvention, which is absolutely critical in today's era of ESG, of sustainability, and obviously large language models and generative AI, we have to start with a single source of truth. And on the top right-hand corner, you can see, as Lars and everybody else in this call have talked about it so far, is the importance of information. BIM is building information modeling, but it's about information. It's that. It's not about fancy graphs. It's not about being able to do clash detection. Yes, clash detection is required, but it is now clash detection between what was specified and what's allowable. Is it fire standard? Is it meeting the standards that are required? And then, as you can see here, the whole thing circulates around that. So everybody that I showed you, and those 13 people I showed you in the earlier slide, actually refer back to this single source of truth. This brings efficiency. Why? Because instead of back and forth between the architect and the contractors and the suppliers, now they all refer back to this standard. And if that standard is to ISO 22386 and 22387, then you can compare apples with apples and oranges with oranges. That is the way forward for the industry, because that's what happens in retail, that's what happens in logistics, that's what happens in high-end manufacturing. Single source of truth data sheets. Moving on to the next slide. Now this is where you have to scan. So as I said earlier, this is an interactive session. So I'd like everybody to take out their mobile devices and scan the QR code on the top left-hand side. When you scan that code, and I'm going to switch screens, hopefully this will work. Just bear with me 2 seconds. So I assume everybody has now taken out their phone and scanned the QR code, as you can see here. When you scan the QR code, you get to this screen. I'm going to share my screen now. Bear with me 2 seconds. And as I said, I'm crossing my fingers and my toes to make sure that this works. And tell me if you can see my screen now. Can you see my screen now?
Not
Hello?
just yet. Have you gone back to the platform? Press
yes, I've
present.
gone back to the platform. Can you see my screen?
It's the same slides that we can see. So back to the platform, press present, share screen and entire screen.
Okay, I'm going to come back to it now. Try it now one more time.
Present entire screen.
Okay, sorry. I'll go back and present entire screen. That's where I went wrong. Entire screen, share. It won't allow me to do that. Okay, we'll have to go back to the slides. So we'll have to go back. Just bear with 2 seconds. Entire screen, share. Okay, we'll stick with the slides. Okay, so something has happened there. I'll go back to the slides. So if everybody's playing with your screen, so you can actually look at the slides. You can assume you can see my slides again now, can you?
Yep.
Yes? Okay, so in the first screen, you can toggle down and pick an individual. Now, the beauty of this solution is the QR code you see on that you scanned on your system is 1 point. It's one scan, multiple outcomes. So if you pick the different players as you go down through the screen, you will get a totally different experience. And that experience is like this, in that you have a screen that appears here. This is the installer. And then you will see the various tiles here. Click on any of those tiles and you get into the information. And then if you click on this one, you can see your construction products, CPR. You can read the information and you're back into the digital product passport. So what we try to achieve here, and this is a demonstration model, is you scan the product, and depending on the acting role that you're playing, you get a totally different experience, which is of value to you in that actor role. This is the critical part of what we're trying to demonstrate. Secondly, you can actually then ensure that you've got the right products online, in that you can scan a 1D barcode on the screws in this case, and you can verify that those screws are the recommended screws. Because as we all know on this call, given our construction background, you have to use the right length of screws to ensure that the design specification that was to make sure that window is secure in the event of an earthquake or something like that is actually going to hold fast. So the fixings that you use are very important. We have another example in the screens that you'll see where you go through the fire doors and you can actually ensure that all the products and components required for a fire door are actually used as well. Moving on to the next slide, you can see here we can actually help manufacturers, for those of you in the room and what's in it for them, is they can see enhanced customer experience. So in the case of the fire door on your screen, if you pick that fire door assembly, you can see this level of information where you can actually scan. And if that manufacturer has a bot, then you can actually get straight through to that R&D department to actually raise your concern and get it addressed, rather than you going on social media and causing a problem for that particular manufacturer. Also, which is obviously very critical in the industry, we're in, is to look at product recalls. So the EU, and in the case of the UK, they have these lists of products that have been recalled. Again, using this system, if the product is identified based on its G10, which is Global Trade Identification Number, then this sign here, which you see the green sign on the screen, actually changes to a red screen. And then finally, then on the last slide, then you end up with what you saw in the supermarket. So what I would ask you to do, now that you have the app, you can play around with it and actually look at the various products. There's 13 products, there's 13 players. In the case of the fire door, you get the full experience. In the case of the window that you can scan on the system, you can see what happens there. But it's, at the end of the day, it's down to the same experience that everybody on this call enjoys when they walk into a supermarket. You go around to the shelves, you put the products into your trolley, as you can see on the screen. You go to the checkout and the person scans. You take out your credit card or your phone and you pay. Why? Because you trust the system. If we are to succeed in the construction,
Dan, just
yeah,
if you could bring your presentation, wrap it up a bit. We just have some final comments to make.
Yeah, we're finished. Yeah. But that's it. That's I'm finished on that. So that's fine. That's fine. But it's the trust element. So thanks very much for your time, and I hope you can play around with the app. As I said, the app is on your phone. It's not. You're not downloading anything. Thanks very much. Having a great day, folks.
So thanks, Dan. Thanks for your input. So now I would like to invite Øyvind to the stage, and we have 2 mics. Øyvind. So Øyvind, we are here with buildingSMART. I think we've run through this the session introduction of DPP. I think this is something that we will hear more about in the coming events. And I mentioned the Brussels effect. And I think, just for your information, I think there's a lot of products sold in Europe which is not manufactured inside of Europe, the European Union. But if you want to sell a product in the European Union, you have to have a DPP. So if you're manufacturing outside of Europe and you want to sell in Europe, you have to make sure to follow the required rules under the different product categories. Construction is one. So I think that is one. But the other one, even, is a discussion that we have been talking about quite a lot, and it is buildingSMART and the buildingSMART standards and SEN 442. So even, how important do you see it for buildingSMART to actually join the work which is now?
Well, first of all, I would say that the reason why I, for example, have been attending a couple of several summits now to trying to invite buildingSMART on board. We need to collaborate on this, and there is possibilities. So buildingSMART and SEN and ISO should collaborate, supporting what's happening here. And I'm quite sure something similar will happen also in Asia and US and America, and the whole Americas in some kind. So we all try to invite you in. There is good possibility to attend here, but we need to follow the rules, the respect for the SEN and ISO and buildingSMART rules. There is an agreement between SE13 and buildingSMART how to operate. So this is possible, but we need to invite you in formally, be a part of it. So, and this is important because the BIM, as is mentioned everywhere, is much more than just IFC and IDS. It's more. IDS and it's important, but it's more.
Yeah, so I'd like to just maybe use this opportunity to say that people here in the room may have different kind of perspectives and use different terms, like in ISO 19650, which is a part of the work that Øyvind is doing, is actually launching those standards, to use them and to implement a better way of working when we go from to implement things like asset information requirements. And this is connected. The issue here is that I think when we work in buildingSMART, I see that we are kind of a little bit disconnected sometimes. But it's not very difficult to sit and understand how this actually connects together all together. So I guess that in the following 1 year, you will hear much more about DPP, and I hope that buildingSMART, the sessions coming up, first now in Singapore, and then the next one in Berlin, I believe, we will focus to try to explain on where we are with the work and showing more practical use cases, because I think practical use cases is something where you can actually understand, and we can kind of showcase APIs, how APIs from dictionaries can train other databases, how we can make requirements, how we can connect to Autodesk, how we can kind of enhance the IFC schema in a better way using this framework. So Øyvind, any last comments?
No, but just Martin didn't mention this. His work in JTC 24 should deliver in 1 year and 4 months by the end of 2025. So this is not something that's happening now. Not tomorrow, not in 10 years, and so on. It's happening now. And the last comment as well for you outside of Europe, because what I told you, the collaboration with ISO and CEN, you can be a part of the work through that system as well from outside Europe, and or directly to ISO or directly to buildingSMART, because buildingSMART have this liaison connection. Yes. So I hope you see many of you in ISO meetings.
So everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. If there's any questions on any of the topics, we are happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. If not, we'll be around.
Yeah. So, is there any questions in the audience that you'd like to ask now, or if not, you can come to me or Øyvind or Martin later.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Sorry, there was actually a question here.
Oh.
So, can I get this one?
This is Mark from the US. I'm curious how you see this affecting markets like US or Australia that you very briefly touched on. Time frame or just dynamics that other sectors that are not part of the EU will be affected.
It's quite practical. If you want to sell a construction products in the European market, you have to have a CE mark. Okay, so that's the magic thing. And this applies to everything in Europe. It's a CE mark, and to have that now in the new regulation for each product category, if you're, let's say, from the US and you want to sell in Europe, you have to follow the regulations in Europe, testing accordingly to European norms, and delivering a declaration of performance conformity within a DPP, and then you have market access. So it's quite easy. No DPP, no CE mark, no market. You can't sell. So that's where you will go to the providers and kind of, but it's not going to be difficult. That's the reality. All this complexity that we're talking about is more like a user interface. You go in, register, you follow the process, and then you register, and then you go.
And the CE marking had been there for 30 years and so on. So I think manufacturers outside Europe is quite well known to this.
So what's new is that PDF is, so we have installation guides, things like that on PDF, but not the data part.
Yeah. Not PDF anymore.
No more PDF there.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, guys, thank you.
Thank you.